Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. They offer free checking with industry-leading mobile banking. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
A home opener loss to Vanderbilt moved the Hokies to 0-2. What happened in the second half to Virginia Tech, and how fast is the pressure rising? Let's talk about it on episode 435 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now.
Well, what happened was that second game, we got our ass kicked, or the second half. We just got our ass totally kicked. We couldn't do diddly poo offensively. We couldn't make a first down. We couldn't run the ball. We didn't try to run the ball. We couldn't complete a pass. We sucked. The second half, we sucked. We couldn't stop the run. Every time they got the ball, they went down and got points. We got our ass totally kicked in the second half. That's what it boiled down to. It was a horse performance in the second half. I'm totally embarrassed and totally ashamed. Coaching did a horrible job. The players did a horrible job. We got our ass kicked in that second half. It sucked. It stunk.
We're recording on Monday, September 8th, 2025 from the Tech Solutions studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the show with a friend if you haven't already. I'm your host, Riley Klaus, and today I'm joined to my left is lead analyst and columnist Chris Coleman. Across the way is our managing editor, David Cunningham. To my right is senior staff writer Andy Bitter. And producing the show, as always, behind the scenes, is Mr. Nick Brown. Now, we're here to recap the game that was between Vanderbilt and Virginia Tech, but make sure to stay tuned in the second half of the video. We're breaking down the big picture of everything upcoming for Virginia Tech athletics. So as we talk about this game, Virginia Tech lost 44-20. It was their first home opener loss since 2015 against Ohio State. And as we talk about this contest, it started all right for the Hokies. They were up 10-0 in the first quarter and had some bright spots.
I think that considering the fact that they were up 20-10 at halftime, that's what makes the second half all the more unbelievable. Is because they were doing a good job. Their game plan was sound. You know, they had long drives to keep Vanderbilt's offense off the field. They forced a couple turnovers. You felt good about the game at halftime. I don't think I've ever seen such a flip.
Yeah.
Like for one half of football like that. It just came out of nowhere. Horrible performance. I think coaching was bad. I mean, when you get beat like that, it had to be bad. But I also think there was a basic, I don't know, there's a lack of belief over there. You don't get beat 34-0 in a half if you're 100% dialed in mentally, physically, and playing 100% hard, and you're confident and things like that. Maybe against Georgia or Oregon or something like that. Vanderbilt's a good football team, but they're not an elite football team. So there's some big picture stuff that's going on over there that I'm concerned about. Even if that's going on, then the coaching aspect of it doesn't matter nearly as much, but it's kind of seems like it was all broken right now. And the crazy thing is, like, there was nothing that happened in the first 6 quarters of football this season to indicate that something like that was coming.
Yeah, I mean, the Titanic was probably a pleasant ride until they hit the iceberg.
Yeah.
The Hindenburg was going along great until it got, blew up at the end. I mean, things turn in a hurry in some of these cases. I think, you said you've never seen such a drastic turnaround like that. I think I've seen one. I think it was Duke and Virginia Tech in 2019. First quarter, Virginia Tech, I think, is up 3-0 in that game. It didn't look like, this is going to be an absolute disaster. And then just on a dime. Like the valve shut off for Virginia Tech, and everything just, flooded on them there. I mean, it was incredible to watch this second half. And there were a little bit of signs of it in the first half. I mean, they got 2 turnovers, which I think really changed the complexion of the game in the first half. But the defense really was not stopping them. It was like at one point, and I know it was skewed by the long pass play that they had. It was like 8.9 yards per play that Vandy was averaging. Even without that, it was 6.3 yards per run. And I'm like, something is not really clicking here. This is not the same defense that showed up last week. And then you saw it in the second half. They had no response. I mean, they were just gashing them 7, 8, 9 yards at a time on the ground. If you're doing that, there's no stopping them. And then, you flip over to the offensive side. They had no response whatsoever. I know there are a couple of injuries on the offensive line, but we're not talking about Christian Darrisaw and Lacita Smith out there that you're losing in this case. They just had nobody behind them to come in and step in. And I know Drones did not play well, but again, he was under siege in that second half. And, quarterback has to adjust to that. The pressure needs to adjust to that. The play caller needs to adjust to that and go, hey, they're bringing the house on every single play. Maybe keep somebody else in to block and give this guy a shot. And they just didn't adjust to it. It was a complete team failure in the second half. And, really, I wrote about this in my column. This was a do or die game. Your backs are against the wall. Your coach is embattled here. What are you going to show me in this game? And they completely laid down in the second half. And one of the worst performances I think I've seen a Virginia Tech team have. And it can't speak too well to the future for Brent Pry and this coaching staff here. That's the kind of result you get out when you needed it the most.
It was just an utter collapse. Like you said, Chris, it all felt okay for Tech at halftime. You're up 20-10, had momentum. You got the ball back with like 4.5 minutes to go, and you didn't let Vandy touch it again. You kick a field goal. I thought Tech worked its 2-minute drive okay for the most part. And like Andy said, you just laid down in the second half, collapsed. Vanderbilt completely ran over the Hokies in the second half and through. You don't just casually get outgained like 307 yards to 21 in the second half. That just doesn't happen easily. You have to be really bad on both sides of the ball, and Tech was. And maybe, I know Brent Pry's thing is like rah, like we'll be okay, let's focus on the positives. But I was a little bit more surprised that he wasn't more, and it didn't come across as upset, really. I mean, yes, disappointed, but like it was kind of just, I think he was a little bit in shock as everybody else after the game.
I'm sure his message to the team is different than what it is to media and the fans afterwards. But I think at this point, the fans want to hear some fire from their coach. I think they want to hear, this is unacceptable. We're turning this around. They want the Jim Mora rant. They want to hear somebody that's angry like them that's out there and said, this is unacceptable. We're changing this right now. Somebody standing on a podium out there, or standing on a step there and giving the rousing speech that's going to rally the troops. And it didn't come across that way. That's probably a choice by him. That's not really his style when he's talking to the media like that. But it might do him some favors to have a little more fire when he's speaking in that situation. Because I think, as I wrote in my column, there's sort of a point of no return for fans with coaches. And, I pointed out the last couple, Beamer was a legend here, but I go back to that 2014 game against Miami. It was Thursday night. It's like, here you go. You got to turn this thing around. This is going to be the game that they get it back on. This is a night that Virginia Tech made famous. And they go out and they lose 30-6. And I think they saved the shutout streak by scoring
with
late
like
in the
30
game.
seconds left,
It was just a non-effort. And Frank got in the post game, was like, we're still moving the right direction. And that was the first time it felt like, I don't think so. I don't think it's coming back. Fuente, we mentioned that Duke game in 2019. They actually turned that season around. It wasn't the end.
6 of the next 7.
Yeah, it wasn't the end of that run. That came with a quarterback change and a scheme change. But then, I look at 2021, that Syracuse game, and they had failed to come back against West Virginia late. Probably didn't really deserve to win that game. They got a late pick that was like, oh my gosh, we have a chance to win this all of a sudden, then couldn't punch it in at the end. Notre Dame was a bad loss. They blew a 2-score lead at the end of that game. Notre Dame was a good team, though. You go, okay, maybe just a better team made plays down the stretch. It's not great. I'm not going to excuse that, but maybe they made plays. Then Syracuse came in. And Syracuse wasn't good that year. And the Tech should have won that game. They were up by 2 scores late. The exact same thing happened. Syracuse scores a touchdown late, and I think that was the point where the fans said, we're done. We're done with this. It's over. I mean, you heard the Fire Fuente chants in the crowd, and you didn't hear that after this game because I think most of the crowd was gone by the end of this game. At least the Syracuse one they lost in the last minute. This one was lost long before that, and I almost feel like that apathy is worse. You want some fire from your fans that are angry. At least they still care about how things are going right now. I think Virginia Tech fans just don't care. They've been so beaten down by this, the results from this staff and this regime that it's just not working. So I think they're in dangerous territory right now. We'll get to all this later in the podcast, but that was sort of a very strange feeling, just sort of a feeling of defeat from the fan base, and warranted. To go sit through that result and see how they played in a game that you had to win, and you hear all offseason, this is as good of a place as this program has ever been, and then that's the first result they get in a home game. I think it's got to be tough to hear.
I think anytime you start getting text messages and DMs from people you haven't seen or talked to in a long time, something either really good has happened or something really bad has happened. And, I go through my phone and hadn't talked to him in 6 months, hadn't talked to her in a year, and blah, blah, blah. And now they're all hitting me up. What in the world happened?
Hokies football, bringing people together.
Exactly. I will say this, if there's a silver lining to this game, is I'm pretty sure the fan base is in alignment right now as to what needs to happen.
Yeah, but I was in the same boat. I was in the press box and a bunch of texts going, what in the world's going on? And people are like, I haven't seen a collapse like this in a really long time. And I think Pride preaches so much about culture, and to his credit, I thought in a lot of ways that Jared Ferguson has kind of been the right hire to do a lot of that stuff. And I think it makes it all the more worse that Tech kind of just laid down in the second half and didn't really show any fight.
Right.
I thought one of the biggest plays, like one of the most impressive plays of the game that Vanderbilt made, it's a triple option, I think, play from Vandy, and Diego Pavia pulls it, keeps it, and he pitches it, and he lays his shoulder down and blocks Quentin Reddish.
Yeah, I remember that.
And he had 2 or 3 of his own blocks. It's like,
I think Pavia took the worst for wear on that play.
Probably
I
did.
think Reddish put him on the ground, but it's just the thought.
he's just like we don't care. We're going to run over you.
The willingness to fight.
Yeah. And I think nothing, like you said, nothing we saw in the first 6 quarters, particularly from that defense that I thought played pretty well against South Carolina, nothing we saw indicated that the Hokies would just come over and lay down.
34-0. Yeah, that's incredible.
I think that is the part that's got to be most disheartening for Hokies fans is you get that first game and you go, okay, it's rough on offense. They'll figure that part of it out, but look at this defense. Mm-hmm. Do we got Bud Foster part 2 here? This guy made, he had Lenora Sellers in a blender for most of that game. And I know he made plays at the end, but he didn't run wild on them. They gave the defense gave the offense a chance. You go, okay, maybe they caught a rising star in this thing, and he's going to be able to adjust week to week and come up with game plans that are going to just confuse opposing coordinators. And they got run over in the second half. They made the adjustments they made, if there were any, did not work. They could not keep up with it. I mean, Vanderbilt gave a lot of triple option looks and misdirection and going different ways. I mean, there's one play where it was the handoff, the one that Pavia had where he was the lead blocker. Watch Ben Bell on that play, and he completely bites the other way, thinking it's going that, and then 2 guys come the other way. And this is why, I'm not singling out Ben Bell on this. A lot of guys were out of position throughout the game, but that was sort of indicative of the second half play. They just had no answer for it. So, I think the hope was, man, maybe they got one on defense here. This is going to be old school Virginia Tech team. The defense will keep them in games. The offense will do enough. And then you look at how the defense played in that second half and you go, I don't know. Maybe that's in rough shape too.
It was the 4th time the Hokies allowed an opponent to average 7 yards per carry in prized 4 seasons, joining losses to Pitt in 22 and Rutgers and Florida State in 23.
Yeah. That is a big stat right there. And just to once again emphasize, it was 34 unanswered for Vanderbilt in this game. Let's take just one more deep step on each side of the ball before we'll talk the big picture in the second half of the podcast. But on offense, it just felt like they couldn't get the playmakers involved when they needed to.
I would agree with that. I thought they did a good job in the first half, staying ahead of the chains. I thought their game plan was sound. And I mean, the overall game plan, let's grind it out. Let's keep Pavia on the sideline. And they did a great job of that in the first
opening
half.
drive was 7 minutes.
Exactly. You look up and then half the first quarter's gone, and you're like, wow, it's only 3 points, but that's the style of football. That's how we have to win football games this year, is what I'm thinking at the time. And they just showed the ability to do that, even if they didn't close it out with a touchdown. So, I agree with Andy. They didn't force a punt in the first half because of the 2 turnovers. Vandy was still moving the ball. But on the whole, you're like, okay, we're up 20-10 at halftime. We'll make a couple adjustments at halftime and win this football game. But I think it's some, offensive line injuries, obviously. once you reach a certain point on the offensive line, when you don't even trust your 5 starters and now you're playing 2 backups.
And not the top 2 backups.
Right. Correct. You're playing 8 and 9.
As Pry explained it, Tech was down 2 starters in Johnny Garrett and Montavious Cunningham. And on top of that, it's 6 and 7 guys, Brody Meadows and Jaden Muskrat are both injured, unavailable. So you're going to your essentially 8th and 9th guys.
Yeah, and I don't think those guys are going to be back anytime soon. It's my understanding, at least for one of them. So
that just let Vandy pin its ears back.
Right. Yeah. And they did. You just watch them. I mean, blitz, come off that edge, and you don't have an answer for it. And I think Tech probably could have done a better job scheming a little bit, but it would have still taken a lot to be consistent in that half with a patchwork offensive line. But this was one of my biggest concerns going into the season. Is I heard back in the spring that they had trouble just basically running basic scrimmage situations in practice because the offensive line just couldn't handle the defense. And just pass rusher coming for you on drones or whoever was the quarterback every which way all spring. So I always I know Pride liked to talk up the offensive line in the offseason and how improved he thought they were. But you remember the interview with Matt Moore right before the first game, and he did not sound confident.
Wasn't reassuring.
It was not
It's
reassuring.
a work in progress.
Yeah. Notice how Pry always said they're the most improved group. It's like, well, if you're here and you improve a lot, you could still be below everybody else in development. That is such a tough group to fix quickly. And, Matt Moore said it's not a 1-year fix. I don't think any, unless you bring in a bunch of 5 stars or a bunch of premier transfers or something like that, it's tough to rebuild that in 1 year. So you've got the 5 guys and then the backups you feel good about. Well, 4 of the top 7 now are hurt. Where do you find more guys like that? You can't just walk around campus. There's not that many large humans around Virginia Tech that you can just plug in there like that. It's a development. They got to play together. You have to have 5 of them. That's a lot. You have injuries at receiver or running back. There's other options there. You can scheme around that a little bit. Oh, all the running backs are hurt. We're going to throw it more in this game. Offensive line is the foundation of everything you do offensively. And if that's not right, I don't know how the offense can be right. And I don't know how you fix that, because it's not like you can go to the free agency. You don't just pick somebody up middle of the semester and plug him in. Maybe someday there will be that the way college football is going.
Maybe you can make a trade.
Yeah, do not have that right now. So
they're going to have
we'd like to trade for Braylon Moore back.
Right.
Yeah.
I think LSU might turn down that request.
Right.
But this is the key thing. I know, drones, people will talk about drones again. They got to give him some help. They got to give him some time up front. And I think that starts schematically. It's got to be, all right, can't just leave these guys on an island of the tackles. You got to get like a tight end chipping him or something. I'm not an X's and O's expert, but you need more guys to block if Vanderbilt's sending 7, 8 than the 5 or 6 that you have back there.
I think the first time we really noticed Tech's defense, Tech's offensive line, it was Tech only ran 5 plays in the third quarter because Vandy had the ball so much. Vandy got it, scored. Tech went 3 and out. That was when Aiden Green had that wild one-handed catch.
Was that where they punted on 4th?
That was one of the best 3-yard gains I've ever seen.
And it was a 4th and 1 punt. And
I think it was even less than 1.
It was
close
4th
to
and short.
Pride took some crap for that.
It was on Tech's own 34-yard line.
Yeah, I know. It's a tough thing. I think in hindsight, Pride explained it, is like, you give up, you don't get it there, you're giving up points the other way. And obviously the comeback is they were going to score points anyway. They scored all quarter. Not at that point in the game they hadn't. So
yeah.
I'm Mr. Go for everything anywhere on the field. And even I kind of understood why they punted in that situation. If you can't trust your offensive line to block, I don't know how you can trust them to get forward progress to even get a yard in that situation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Tech had done okay on that drive. A 4-yard gain to Hawkins, a 5-yard pass to Green. It wasn't like Tech. You're staring 4th and short in the phase. But I thought the biggest thing was the next drive. That's when we saw, I think, Aiden Lynch for the first time. Incomplete pass on the first play of the drive to Aiden Green, and then Aiden Lynch gets a false start penalty. So it's 2nd and 15, and then Drones gets sacked on the final play of the third quarter. And it's like Virginia Tech's going backwards and quickly for the first time all game. And then I mean, Tech couldn't put up a fight offensively from there. I mean, those guys, Vanderbilt is literally stacking up 6-7 guys at the line, bull rushing everybody, and Drones isn't checking anything. I mean, he doesn't know what to do under duress like that, under that kind of pressure where he has no time. So it went from okay to really, really bad very quickly.
Of the top 50 most pressured quarterbacks that face most pressured PFF, Drones has the second lowest completion percentage.
That was a great stat you dug up.
Zach Calzada, Kentucky, is lower, but Drones is like 4 for 20. I mean, he doesn't handle pressure well, and he's getting pressured a lot right now.
Right.
Yeah, and now let's take a look at the defense before we'll get into the big picture after the break. But defensively, something that stood out, Vandy had over 7 yards a carry. What's going to need to be adjusted defensively?
You know, I went back a little bit last night. I tortured myself, and I kind of flipped it through here and there. I didn't watch every single play, but I talked to somebody yesterday afternoon who had watched the film, and this is a guy who I know knows football. And he said, you know, the defensive line wasn't great, but they weren't as bad as it seemed. He said the main issue was the linebackers were not aggressively attacking their gaps. And if you look at the PFF scores, that vibes. There were a couple of low grading defensive linemen, but for the most part, they were average to above average with their gradings. With even a couple.
I saw Emmanuel Hickman was way up
with
there.
a couple of good performances. Elijah Fall again as well. Only one of the linebackers graded out above 60. I mean, it was just seemed like it was a bad performance, and I kind of saw some of the same stuff from what little I did watch it. I couldn't stomach to watch too much of it. I don't know how you fix that outside of recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. You don't give up 7 whatever yards per carry without it being a team effort. I mean, you know, front, middle, back, the entire defense contributed to that. Again, I just think they got out coached in the second half. I know there are probably, you know, mental errors that players made and stuff like that, but it looked like I don't know if they were surprised by what Vanderbilt did, but it felt like once they really cranked up the triple option stuff, and you saw a lot more of it in the second half, that the Hokies just didn't really know how to respond to that.
The first play of the game, they ran the option to the left, and Tech just shut it down. And I'm like, boom, we're on point tonight. I'm like, I should have changed my pick, right? But it did not stay that way, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see the X's and O's breakdown from Brandon this week. Just like, you know, what did they do second half?
I think what really got Vandy going was Pavia. Like he kept it a couple different times. The first play of the second half, he ran up the middle for 7 yards, and they had 1 or 2 other plays where he just like quarterback blast, like take it and go.
Right.
And when you can pick up 5, a handful of yards on a play like that, like I think what Vandy just didn't get behind the sticks anymore in that game, and instead it's exactly what you talked about sitting here on the podcast the other day. Vandy's operating in second and short, third and short, fourth and short.
Absolutely.
Pavia's going to cook. Like that's just what happened. And then
he only threw 18 passes.
Yeah, and then Virginia Tech is on its heels. Ran some triple option. There was that reverse that picked up like 21 yards. Yeah. I think that was in the fourth quarter. But
that was to Trey Richardson.
Yeah, but I thought, and then you incorporate some of those passes, and Pavia was able to scramble around, make some plays. I mean, that deep ball down the sideline, for that touchdown to Trey Richardson to take the lead. One-handed catch, fantastic play.
It was.
I think it just was a matter of, Andy said, outcoached. Vandy just did exactly what it wanted to do. Pavia got going, got comfortable, and made plays. And Virginia Tech was kind of just like not completely unsure of what was coming its way.
Yeah, it was just the perfect storm of everything going wrong. Not coached well enough. Didn't play tough enough, didn't play hard enough. I mean, just everything. It's one of those situations where if it was just one thing that was broken, you're like, oh, okay, you could put your finger on that and you fix it this week. But it was everything. Everything you can literally imagine was wrong.
And let me bring up one more thing. Virginia Tech only had 2 penalties in the entire game. Vanderbilt had a lot of penalties.
That's true.
And not enough to slow them down on a couple drives.
So on the Vanderbilt's go-ahead scoring drive, it had 3 penalties, an ineligible player downfield, a delay of game, and it had a holding penalty later in the drive. But in between, on 2nd and 16, it had that huge 25-yard gain, and Tech's one of 2 penalties all game was a roughing the passer call on Ben Bell.
Right.
And that was added 15 more on. It's a 40-yard gain. And so it's just like, there wasn't a lot of Tech just doing little tiny things like that, but like, you've got Vanderbilt in a pretty good situation. You give up a huge chunk, and then you have a bad penalty on top of it. It's just like, I think that's just kind of when it went from bad to worse for the defense.
And I'll say this with regards to the defensive line and the linebackers. Going into the South Carolina game, I put in my preview the interior of South Carolina's offensive line is a huge question mark. It's a bunch of dudes who hadn't played before. And if you go back and watch that game, the Tech linebackers were never blocked in that game because the Virginia Tech defensive tackles were just eating double teams. Like, they dominated that inexperienced and completely mediocre interior offensive line for South Carolina. Vanderbilt is better there than South Carolina.
They play each other this week.
I know.
South Carolina's
It's
7-point
crazy.
favorites in that, and I'm like, ugh. Are they?
I guess Virginia Tech.
They're a top 10 team, and Vanderbilt is not ranked. And I watched both those teams play, and I don't know if I'd flip them, but I definitely have Vanderbilt in the rankings. That's a solid team.
It is.
With a quarterback who'll just fight you to death.
Where is that game?
It's at South Carolina.
Okay. Well, Vanderbilt's not going to be blown away by the atmosphere. That's for sure. It wouldn't shock me if Vanderbilt won that game. We'll see.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of great numbers thrown out between everyone, but David, you have a couple of extra great stats to share with us.
Yes, our stat time with Scott Glesner, which is sponsored by Rich Webb, and there's an ad read. Presented by Rich Webb, driving enterprise IT. Rich Webb has hosted Tech Sideline for 2 decades, and there's a lot of stats. Scott sent these. Looks like Will sent these yesterday in the afternoon. Looks like Scott sent them like after midnight on Sunday morning, so after Tech's game ended. First, on record, this is only the second time Virginia Tech has scored 10-plus points in both the first and the second quarter and lost the game. Tech's lost to UVA in 1998, 36-32 was the other instance. This is also only the second time Virginia Tech has scored double digits in both of the first and second quarter and then scored 0 points in the second half on record. The 2001 win against UVA is the other one. Didn't score in the second half after scoring 10-plus in the first and second quarter.
I was at that game. That was my freshman year of college. It was 31-0 at halftime, and they won 31-17. Yep.
This is only the 7th time on record Tech has allowed 34-plus in the second half. The last time, 2018, lost to Old Dominion. Virginia Tech is 1-6 in those games. The only win was 93 Rutgers, which was the only other time it happened at home. And I mentioned to you guys before we started that if Vanderbilt had not missed the point after try, that it would be tied for the most points Virginia Tech has ever given up in a second half.
Anytime you're invoking that 2018 ODU game, it's not great.
Yeah.
It's not a great thing.
I mentioned it afterwards. Virginia Tech stats database dates back to 1987, and Hokies did not have a game on file where the opponent did not punt. Scott says this is only the 3rd time on record that Virginia Tech's opponents had 0 punts. The other two, 86 against Syracuse, which was a Virginia Tech win, 26-17, and the dreadful 1973 77-6 loss to Alabama. Vanderbilt had 8.6 yards per play, the most by an opponent since Maryland's 9.1 yards per play in the 2021 Pinstripe Bowl. Another not so great game.
Don't want to bring that one up either.
31 points allowed in the red zone by the Hokies, the most since they allowed 31 against Vanderbilt last year in the red zone.
Well,
common theme there.
Virginia Tech has scored 0 points in the last 3 third quarters. Tech has also only scored 3 points in the last 3 second halves of games. So that's, I guess, including the Duke's Mayo Bowl last year against Minnesota. This is very interesting. The 71.4 third down conversion percentage by Vanderbilt is the 3rd most since 1985. The other two, 76.5 by Cal in the 2003 Insight Bowl. So that's Aaron Rodgers. And then 83.3% by Boston College in the 1993 loss. I could not have told you who that quarterback was, but
God, who was it? I forget. But well, the story I remember about that game is El Mashin was Tech's defensive coordinator, and like the third play of the game, he just threw down his headset and said, "We can't stop him."
well,
I think when I interviewed him, he said, Frank, I've got a terrible game plan and we're not executing it worth a bleep. There were more bleeps in his things. Like, if you want to fire me after the game, I completely understand. That was basically what he told Frank at that point.
here's the last one. This is the second time in Pry's tenure that Virginia Tech has lost 3 straight games by double digits. The other one was in 2022 when the Hokies only won 3 games. Fuente had a 4-game stretch of losing by double digits. Beamer only had 1 3-game stretch, which came in 1988.
Wow.
So that's it. That's your stat time with Scott Glesner.
Well, that was fun. Thanks, Scott.
presented by Rich Webb.
Yeah, really quick for reference, that 1993 Boston College quarterback, Glenn
Foley.
Foley. 448 yards, 3 touchdowns,
Glenn
1
Foley,
picks
yeah.
on the day.
Glenn Foley was good now.
So
was
how
good.
about that?
That was back when BC was humming. as a program.
Sorry, that wasn't. Will told me I had to read it. So
Well, thank you very much for all of those, David. We are going to talk the big picture of what's up next for Virginia Tech after a word from one of our sponsors.
Are you ready for a custom home tailored to your distinctive lifestyle? At Tyrus Homes, a leading custom home builder in the New River Valley, we pride ourselves on crafting exceptional residences that our clients love to call home. Whether you're a first-time buyer, a growing family in search for more room, an active adult seeking a relaxing retreat, or looking for a higher-end custom home that offers luxury and sophistication, we have the perfect solution for you. Discover how you can bring your dream home to life at tyrushomes.com. That's TYRIS homes.com.
All right, now we know this game meant a lot for what's next for Virginia Tech, so let's start breaking down what is upcoming. First of all, how fast does it up the urgency of this season for Virginia Tech?
Oh, I mean, the urgency was there months ago. And
the urgency was going in.
Yeah.
That's I think we're past the point.
we're past the point of urgency.
Even the most optimistic Virginia Tech fans will point out that the last 2 times they started 0-2, they won the conference.
Factually correct.
Factually correct. Does not fit the
and
tenor
they both
does
went
not
to really
fit-
good bowl games.
Yeah, the tenor does not feel like that this year. I mean, those are teams that came in with some expectations on their season. That was not the case with this Virginia Tech team. Picked 10th. What were they?
11th,
Something like that.
11th
in the ACC. And it looks like that might have been generous. Looking how they played these first couple weeks. Like I said in my column, I don't know how you come back from this. I mean, this was a season where Pry had to do something special. So they had to show some progress. What can you achieve progress with? I mean, unless you just completely turn things around and run through the ACC or something like that. I don't think that's going to happen. But what's a realistic number to hit in conference play? 500? That makes
Realistic?
I'm saying what's an optimistic number?
Optimistic.
500. That puts you 500 on the season. Does that feel like you're making progress as a program?
Assuming you beat ODU, it puts you at 500.
Right. I'm assuming wins the next 2 weeks.
Right.
And if they don't win the next 2 weeks, then accelerate this conversation even further. I mean, does he make it out of September at that point? You go 5-3 in the conference, you're 7-5. That doesn't feel like a whole lot of progress for this program. And 5-3 is a real stretch.
Yeah.
With all of a sudden, they've got a stretch there. They play Louisville, Florida State,
And Miami.
UVA looks decent.
Miami
year.
looks better than I expect. Florida State looks
You're
better
at Georgia
than expected.
Tech.
And Cal.
Georgia Tech's a tough
And
one.
Cal's right before
Cal doesn't
Louisville.
look like a
Quarterback.
pushover. The only game that you're like, they should probably win that one is Wake, who, is not exactly, rolling right now.
But that'll
with
be a
new
rock
coach.
fight.
It could be. They've been involved in rock fights with Wake Forest before. That is not not atypical. So I just
0-0.
think this was a season where this coaching staff and this team need to show the fans something to make them believe that they could get a 5th season. And you're 2 games in, and even if you reach modest expectations the rest of the way, I don't know that that's shown progress for the season. I think, Pry tops those lists on first fired coaches, those odds. I get sent that email every week, and somehow this is the week I don't get
We
sent
haven't
the
gotten
email about that. I'd be interested to see who's number 1. Is it Pry? Is it Billy Napier?
Mike
Oddly,
Gundy.
two of the like three main names that were in conversation about the hire the last time Virginia Tech had one. I mean, it's Pry, it's Napier, probably Mike Gundy, probably 1, 2, 3 there. How do you decide between those three? I mean, it's tough times right now.
It is. I think the whole thing was botched in the offseason from an administration standpoint. I think, everybody went into the season like hoping Virginia Tech would be better with new coaches and everything like that, new coordinators. But you had to look at Pry's career record of 16-21 coming into the season and concede the very strong possibility that things would not get better. In which case, and if they don't, in which case you're going to need a new athletic director because you can't let Whit Babcock hire the next football coach. That's a non-starter. He knows that. Everybody knows that.
He's already gotten 2 bites at the apple here, and neither one has worked out.
And his bite at Cincinnati
If you go back to Cincinnati, he hired somebody who's now a U.S. senator. Who was terrible as a football coach at Cincinnati.
Right. So he's 0 for 3. It's not happening. So if there's at least a decent chance you're going to need a new football coach, you need a new athletic director in place for about 6 months so he can set up his own administration, get to know the big donors, get to know the lay of the land, understand the situation he's getting himself into, and then when November or December comes around, make his decision. The administration here, from the president, BOV, all that, they just kick the can down the road. Just hoping the situation would magically fix itself and they wouldn't have to deal with it, right? Well, they're going to have to deal with it now. We are here in September, and you're going to have a new athletic director because you're probably going to have a new football coach. And now you face the very real possibility of having to hire both of them at pretty much the exact same time.
And by the way, come up with $50 million more a year.
Exactly. Right.
As requested with Babcock at his presentation. I mean, this is what's on the plate for these decision makers here.
They should, in this past spring, it should have been announced that Babcock was not returning. And you have a new athletic director lined up to start work on July 1st when the calendar year flips. And right now we'd be talking about that new athletic director and all their new staff members and how the athletic department is better aligned and how within the next couple months here, he's going to be making a change and we'll see what he does. But instead, now we don't know who that athletic director is going to be. And there is going to be one, like 34-0.5. That will, I'm not going to say it's the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the sledgehammer that broke its back. But I think,
you're not wrong.
I mean, it's coming. It's just a matter of the timing and everything like that. September 30th is that deadline date for the 2 BOV members to outline their plans for how to support the football program. And I would not be surprised at all if there was something in there with regards to the athletic director. So something is going to change there. It's just a matter of the timing of the announcement and the timing of when it happens. But it should have happened this past summer, and it was negligent of that group for them to just ignore it and kick the can down the road for now. But that's what I wrote in my article yesterday, and I've been wanting to write that for months. I just needed the opportunity, and 34-0.5 provides you with a pretty big window.
Well, the timing is the thing that's tough now, because you don't hire an athletic director in a week or 2 weeks. That's a process. It's a committee that's doing the whole thing. It's not like a AD hiring a coach where the AD is pretty much responsible for doing that. I know they'll outsource stuff to different search committees and people that you can hire to do some of the legwork on that stuff. But getting an AD in there takes a while, and even the fastest searches I think are 5-6 weeks. Mm-hmm. So even if they did something today, which I don't think they will, but 6 weeks from now, you're looking at the end of October, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're almost in November, and then say you get somebody new in there in that sense, then they're going to turn around and make a decision on a program they've been around for 2-3 weeks about the head coach. That's really tough to do. So it's tough if you're going that direction. You're going to make an AD change. It's tough to get somebody new in and for them to get the lay of the land to make that decision. If you don't, Witt doesn't want to fire Brett necessarily because I feel like their jobs are kind of tied together, and I think he knows that. It might come to a point where it just needs to be done anyway. So say they don't have an athletic director. Who's hiring the football coach in that sense? The Board of Visitors is hired? Like they outsource it to a search firm? Yeah. John Boleyn is here. I don't think a lot of fans want him hiring the next coach, and he's retiring soon, from what I hear.
Sounds like the spring.
So I mean, it's just an awkward situation with everything right now. And then, on top of that, if you don't have an AD in place, what football coach wants to go work for a place and be a new hire when you don't know who your boss is going to be going forward? Because that's a good way for a coaching tenure to go south. Is you get hired, the AD changes, and all of a sudden you don't have a good relationship with that person. And it's like, well, this isn't what I was promised when I came in here. That's a good way not to have alignment about the way the program is going. So it feels like it's very awkward timing, and I mean, things need to happen fast if you want to even get in on a normal kind of timeline. And even then, it feels very, condensed.
That's the thing that angers me the most, like, as a fan. I'm not mad at Pry. He's not good enough, but he puts in a diligent day's work every day and doesn't intentionally, like, do things wrong. This group has just botched it. They've just kicked the can down the road, just negligent. And their passive approach to solving problems just creates more problems. And, let's make one thing clear. Like, the Board of Visitors changes over often. Like, those guys have, and guys and gals have term limits. So, like, the Board of Visitors from last year is not the same Board of Visitors of this year.
Also, larger concerns than just athletics.
Correct.
It's not like they're just there to decide what goes on athletics. They're making decisions for a university.
They don't even have a university provost right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are other things there are other fish to fry at the same time. That being said, athletics is an extremely important part. And I do think this current board has a better understanding of athletics, but they've only been there for, a few months. So you haven't really been able to tell it. And I do think they're going to do something about this, but the fact that nothing was done about it this past spring and this past summer puts Virginia Tech in a much more difficult situation now. Now, I want to stress that it's not an impossible situation. It's certainly with the right plan and the right decision-making and everything like that, everything will be fine. But you do back yourself into a corner and make it tougher on you.
What's interesting is Virginia Tech's president, Tim Sands, he's the chair of the D1 board of directors. And if anybody should have a better feel, like, no university president in theory should have a better feel of the college landscape than him. I think the Hokies were probably hopeful. The leadership at the top was probably hopeful that so much has changed in the last 6 months. What do we talk about with the whole BOV meeting recently? People were like, why didn't Witt do this earlier? And it's like, so much has changed in the last year between revenue sharing, now that athletic departments can pay players, and also the ACC settlement with Clemson and Florida State. So much has changed recently. And I think Babcock has done fine ushering in that. But at the same time, if Virginia Tech isn't winning on the football field, it doesn't matter. And so I think it was like, it's this weird, awkward balance of, like, you don't want to do anything because you're entering this new era of college athletics where you're paying student athletes out of your own pocket. But it probably would have been better for Virginia Tech in the long run had Tech had more urgency in that whole thing. Just very weird, very, as Andy said, awkward, very complicated. It's not an easy matter. Somebody mentioned to me yesterday, what if Virginia Tech did something like Tennessee did, where Tennessee went and hired Danny White, who brought Josh Heupel with him. I don't know what the odds of that are, where you get a coach AD, but it, like you said, Chris, if you go at it the right way, if it's the right plan, you could end up with the right situation. But the timetable's weird, and of course the transfer portal now, it looks like it's going to be shuffling to January. But you still got high school recruiting. How much stock do you put in that? Does it matter? Probably not if you're bringing in a new head coach. So there are so many, it's like a spider web. There are so many different things to keep in mind. And the fact that you're looking at this timetable now, and we're talking on September 7th or 8th, and we don't know when anything's going to happen. Like, the longer it drags out, is the more complicated it could become.
Sure.
I don't know if we want to point to Tennessee for lessons in how to run a coaching search. That was
they did a coup d'etat with the athletic department.
That's one of those. I mean, that Tennessee search was one where, like, somebody like tripped down a hill and like landed on their feet at the end. It's like, see, we did it. We got this
We got it.
great AD and a great coach.
I was
Like,
just
what you
using it
kind
as
of
an
lucked
example.
into that one. That was not a great process to get to that point. I think the interesting dynamic of this whole thing is, Witt has gone to this board and says, we need $50 million more a year to compete. And the board is like, all right, you've got our attention. We're going to find out ways to do that. But if you're the board of visitors and you're like, we're giving you this money?
No way.
Like, this is how you and Pry have performed over the years. Like, if we're going to give this money out here, it's going to be to a new regime and go, all right, you're going to compete in this thing. Because I don't think the current group has shown that they can be competitive. And I know you need more money to compete and stuff like this. Vanderbilt's not outfunding you football-wise.
Exactly.
You didn't lose that game because you were underfunded. Virginia Tech spends more on football than Vanderbilt does. I know you look at the overall athletic department numbers, and it's tough for Virginia Tech right now to keep up. Just the money they get from TV is not as much as these SEC schools. Donations is not as much as a lot of ACC schools are on the bottom end of that. But if you look at the football spending specifically, and Witt said this himself, they're in the top 4 in the ACC, top quarter of ACC spending. So I don't feel like this football program has been underfunded necessarily. Again, you could always use more NIL. Everybody can always use more NIL money, but they've put money into this thing to compete, and they're not getting a return on that investment. So I think that's something you need to look at and go, why isn't this working? And I feel like they've been given a fair shot. Babcock has certainly been here for a while. He's been here, what's it now, 12
He's
years?
the longest serving AD.
It'll be
right?
12 years at the end of this year. That's a pretty long run, and it's been middling football success that whole time. This is year 4 for Pry, and I know people will point out Frank Beamer didn't do it till year 6. It's like, okay, that's true, but different day and age, different expectations are being placed on programs to succeed quicker, different ways to remake a roster faster now. UNC has 70 new players on their roster this year. You can flip an entire roster in a year. I'm not saying that's what you should do. I'm saying that's what you can do, though. The possibility is out there to go and put together a whole new thing and fix, deficiencies that you have in a program. So, 4 years in, I think you've got to be able to show some progress, and they just haven't. And at a certain point, you go, if it's not happening now, is it going to happen? What's one more year going to do? And I think a lot of people look back at the lesson they had from Fuente, and 2020, and it's a weird time, COVID. Everything that was weird about that season and opt-outs, you don't have full rosters. I think a lot of people look back at not removing him after the 2020 season and go, well, you set the program back a year by not doing it at that point.
Yeah, don't throw good money after bad, I think is basically what you're saying. It doesn't make any sense to invest more. If you're the university, here, Whit Babcock, here's a big check for $50 million since, you haven't shown an ability to spend the money well that you do have. For me, that's why I'm thinking that probably that September 30th deadline date, you're going to see a little more than just an announcement about here are the financial plans. I think you're going to see something a little bit bigger than that. Maybe not on that specific date, but maybe somewhere around then.
Yeah, something I just want to note. So, if you mentioned Whit Babcock did that press conference in 2020. Where he doubled down on Fuente.
Right.
Tech is 22-30 in football since. That's including Fuente's season. So on top of Pry's 4 years, if you're the board of visitors, you're just kind of looking at it. I mean, you hope it changes, and it hasn't changed. Now you got to do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, since 2022, Virginia Tech, I believe, is 0-7 against Vanderbilt, Purdue, Rutgers, and Duke. Like 16-year-old me. If you told me that, I would, but no way that's even possible.
And losses to Marshall and Old Dominion in there too.
And credit to those programs because they have all gotten better. Although that Purdue team was only a 3-win team, I think. But
look at Duke, Mike Elko, another guy that was in the conversation for the job the last time.
Exactly right. So I think it's one of those things where there's only one direction to go from here, and we all know what's going to happen. It's just a matter of the timing of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on paper, what do you think the rest of this season looks like on the field and off the field for Virginia Tech after seeing 2 weeks?
Ooh. Well, I don't feel comfortable about my 7-5 preseason.
No, I think that's right out the window.
That much. I wrote it kind of in the 5 thoughts going through the games individually. I I think they should win the next two. I think they should get to 2-2 in non-conference. Again, if they don't, there's an accelerated conversation about this whole thing. After that, ACC play is tough. I mentioned those games. I mean, I didn't like their chances at Georgia Tech to begin with. Louisville didn't exactly, light the world on fire against JMU at home, but that's still a really good program. Florida State obviously vastly improved over last year. Miami, proving me wrong. They look solid. I picked that as my upset game before the season. No longer feel that way with that one. Cal seems, they got that freshman quarterback whose name I can't pronounce. He looks pretty good, pretty poised so far. All of a sudden that Friday nighter looks tough. Or the other, NC State could be an interesting one because they didn't really play any defense in that Virginia game, and yet that's a road game to start ACC play. You lose that one, you get off on the bad foot. You come back the next week. I think it's Wake Forest. After that, that's one you could win, but it gets tough from then on out. And now I think you look at UVA. They've shown me something these first couple weeks. That looks like a competitive team. Really should have beaten NC State last week. I watched that whole game.
I watched that game in a tailgate.
The running back Virginia Tech didn't tamper with.
They should have tampered with him. They should have.
Jamari Taylor, he's terrific.
They miss a field goal. They're down 4, I think, and they miss a field goal that bounces off the upright. They don't get a first down, fourth down at
they went an unbalanced formation and ran it behind the unbalanced side and just didn't get it.
And then the end of the game, they're slicing right down the defense, going down the field, and quarterback throws a bad pick. He telegraphed it, and the guy. It was the guy was fair catching it in the end zone practically. I think it was like a defensive end or linebacker, whatever it was. I really feel like UVA should have won that game. All of a sudden, I look at that and I go, man, I feel like UVA's in a better spot right now than Tech is. So you always kind of count it as like for sure win. You'll beat UVA at the end of the year. I don't think that's there. So. You react week to week and there are wild swings in this stuff, but man, I'm looking at this, I'm going 4-5 wins.
Yeah.
That ain't getting it done in a make or break season. That just can't happen.
Pry is a career, I think 42% winning percentage.
Yeah.
You've got 10 games left. That puts us right around 4 wins. I would say 4-8 seems like the most likely record.
Riley, what's interesting here is from what we saw on Saturday from the Virginia Tech offensive line, like if that's, Chris mentioned it earlier, like that probably defines the rest of Virginia Tech's season. Tech got better defensively, and I don't think that what we saw from this Virginia Tech defense is what we're going to see the rest of the year.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Sam Cephas will get that group right. Not saying they're going to be really good, but just that they will be improved from the second half. But if that Virginia Tech offensive line is not better, I don't know that Virginia Tech can block Old Dominion. Like,
how are they going to score?
Yeah, so like
besides Wofford.
Yeah, well, Wofford only lost to Richmond by 1 this weekend.
Still should be Wofford.
This is the state of the program, is questioning the Wofford result.
But so it's just like, I don't think that's what worries me. Like, if Virginia Tech isn't healthy up front, like how in the world are you going to move the ball down the field? And I think it's a little bit of a bummer because the Hokies, like, we're moving the ball okay in that first half against Vandy. But if you've got teams like, it didn't look like NC State or UVA played any defense, but if they can just pin their ears back like Vandy did and tee off on you because your offensive line isn't that good, you are in big, big trouble. So that coupled with all this uncertainty around, it's kind of just delaying the inevitable at this point with Babcock. It's going to be an interesting couple weeks.
I'll say this: they're not lacking in bulletin board material from this podcast alone. Coaches are always like us against the world mentality, and it's
put it on the wall.
It's like Dabo Sweeney's. It's like, who's doubting Clemson? I do have some doubts about Clemson right now, but during their like national championship round, it's like nobody's ripping on Clemson right now. There's been not great stuff said about Virginia Tech right now, and I don't think there's a lot of believers anywhere outside that locker room, and maybe not even in that locker room. So if you can't find something motivating for this group right now, and throw this on the locker beforehand, I feel like that's even more troublesome.
Even before the game on Saturday, turn it on College Game Day, and there's Herb Street. He's like, all Virginia Tech has is an entrance.
It's true. Yeah.
And
I was saying
correct.
it on the Sirius XM radio this week because they kept asking me a Metallica question. Like, you got to do something after the entrance to make fans want to stick around and do something.
Yep.
Yeah. And Andy talks about being motivated. I mean, I think that going back to the Vandy game, that's what's crazy about the whole second half is that the Hokies should have had more motivation to play this game than any other game at the beginning of the year. And it's
a home night game.
Yeah. And that was a good crowd.
That
was a very good crowd for up until it started to go south.
Well, of course not. Who wants to sit around and watch
my point is, it's like that just, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Pry has anything to say about just the aftermath of it, because going back to what we were talking about earlier where Andy said, Coach, some fans just want to see fire. It's like, I'm surprised considering all of the alums that are in this program that are working for Virginia Tech. Jarrett Ferguson as a strength and conditioning coach. Like, I know they can't feel good about where this is. Xavier Debe, J.C. Price, Cam Phillips. I mean, like, this is like that second half performance was pretty embarrassing.
It was, and I feel bad for the fans, and I've said this plenty of times, but I did my normal Saturday thing. I started off in the RV lot by the airport and went and parked downtown, and then made my way to lot 1, and just you go through the tailgating lots, you talk to so many fans, and you just see the millions and millions of dollars that's invested into just tailgating. And that's who I really feel bad for, because it's a great fan base that deserves better. And that's really what makes me angry with the administration is all those people that are dishing out their good, hard-earned money and really just doing a great job supporting the program. They have not been represented well at the top level at Virginia Tech. You can't be negligent with this football program when that fan base puts so much into it. So that's who I feel bad for here is the fan base.
This was the first home game.
Yeah.
It's not like you're in mid-October. You're like, well, that's it. I'm packing it in for the season. This is the first home game.
Yeah.
You still have 7 or 6 more of these?
Yeah,
six
more.
Yeah.
First of 7.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean, you got to be a trooper to keep coming to this game or to this town week after week to go through these games. And, hopefully they get a couple wins that they can be, cheer these next couple weeks. But it's got to be a very downtrodden feeling to be like, all right, gonna turn it around. Brand new season, fresh slate, here we go, and that's the first result you get. It's just got to be demoralizing.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap it up with this. What would it take for this group to get back on track, and is it possible?
A time machine. Seriously, go back in time. Don't hire Ron Crook. Don't do all that stuff.
Is the O-line going to eventually be Pry's downfall? You never got that right.
Yes.
Rudolph was his big hire to start, and it lasted 1 year. And then they were scrambling. It was Ron Crook, and that didn't go well for 2 years. I like Matt Moore, and I think he's a good coach, but you don't turn that around
takes time.
that quickly.
Yeah.
I feel like that spot was never right.
I agree. And there's also like bigger picture issues that fans don't necessarily see, but we do. In the preseason and in the spring, they'll let us in practice like once a week or whatever. And it's common for us, they'll say, show up at 3:30. And then it's common for them to be, 15, 20 minutes late starting practice. But then one day this preseason, they were like an hour late starting practice because they tell us to get there at 5:30. They don't take us out for interviews until 6:30 because they started practice an hour late. And that's common. Not an hour late is common, but 15 or 20 minutes being late is common. And that happens almost every media access day, which leads me to believe that it happens a bunch of other days too. So
that goes back to that great clock management.
Right. Time management, whether it's in-game or practice time.
Yeah.
If you can't take care of the little things as far as starting practice on time, it's your own schedule. You set the schedule. So if little things like that aren't taken care of properly, what other things that we can't see aren't being taken care of properly? We can talk about all the coordinators and the X's and O's and all that stuff all you want, but you're never going to have consistent results if you can't perform consistently on a daily basis from the very top.
And it all goes back to the head man. And I want to go back and watch this again afterwards. But Nick brought it up before he went on air. Virginia Tech's 2-minute drive, or 4-minute drive, I should say. Coming down the field, get down to a good spot. You're setting up to set up John Love. And you just completed a pass over the middle, I believe, to Cam Selden. And probably, as Nick pointed out, probably went to go call timeout with like 16 seconds left or 15 seconds left and had to be like pulled back. Like, I think Brian Christ, you said, Nick?
Yeah.
And like, you know, we've talked time and time again about the little things, about the clock management, about having double numbers on the field. And all. This is like, there's so many little things that go into it. And those little things make a big difference at the end of the day, whether it's on the field or off the field. And it's not just in the football program. I mean, you want to talk about wit in the bigger picture. There are so many little things that go on in the athletics department as a whole that need to be fixed.
Yes.
And there aren't really any repercussions. And there are a lot of people that I know, we know personally that just like they're not in a great place as an athletic department, and people don't necessarily see that. People see the on-field product, and it's just going to be very interesting to see how these next handful of months play out, because it's not just Pry and the football program, and it's a lot of people's jobs on the line across the athletic department, and you're going to see a max exodus of players probably come the end of the year,
sure,
as you would normally, but as you would in this day and age. But it's just, I don't know. This basketball season can't, in my opinion, for me, basketball season can't get here soon enough.
And it's going to be frustrating the rest of the year. Like, you want to get to the end result, like whatever's going to happen, we want to get there and talk about it. But like, they're going to play a football game next week, and we're going to sit on the podcast and break it down. And what's the point, right? Just get me to the end, and so I can see what's going to happen. That's the only thing I'm worried about.
I think
right
Will
now.
said that yesterday, didn't he? He said something like, it's just going to be the same old thing for the next.
I was done after the
couple
first
weeks.
game last year, and that's when I decided I'm just picking Virginia Tech to lose every close game the rest of the season. I thought they
Congratulations on your 14-game
that's
streak,
right.
by the way.
I am in first place now. I did pick Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a good pick, though, because I picked them to win by 4, not 24.
Did you feel good at halftime?
I didn't feel good about my pick. I felt good about Virginia Tech winning the game, which is what I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how we're going to talk about this the rest of the year, man. That's why something needs to happen.
Yeah.
So
it's not a ringing endorsement for the podcast listeners.
I know,
No, we're
I
going to
know.
have great stuff every week. Continue to tune
we're
in.
going to have
We
great
will have
stuff.
great stuff every week.
Listen, we come up with inventive ways to talk about this.
We do.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna be a fun couple months.
Well, speaking of that, what's coming up at techsideline.com?
We're on our normal week of normal game week stuff. Like, we have a set schedule. I think Brandon Patterson will be tomorrow. I'll do the preview on Thursday. I'll do Inside the Numbers on Wednesday. There'll probably be a pretty ugly article this week. Normal week of this is the first. So this is a regular week. It's not a short week. Yeah,
we'll see who they bring to the press conference. Notably, ODU bringing nobody all week. It's just Ricky Ronnie has his press conference on Monday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, no media availability, practice closed. So I don't know if that's atypical of what they do.
I'm not sure.
Maybe Ronnie's sensing blood in the water here. Maybe this is a game they feel they can win.
I guarantee you.
Former coworker circling the wagon.
I mean, that
around
would be
Pry.
full circle to be like, you started it with a loss to Ronnie. This could be a bad way to end. They don't have Jason Henderson medically retired.
I saw that. That's a shame, because he's such a good player.
He's an incredible player.
Not that I'm not that I condone like out and out poaching, but when he was one I wanted to poach, and then he got hurt.
Yeah, but that'd be fun. Yeah.
So I can promise you we'll have more coverage on the Hokies than the ODU writer will have for the Virginia Pilot, simply
question.
because of access.
No question.
Yeah. You remember how I did that Chester Frazier interview a couple weeks back?
I do.
And I hadn't written it because I was letting the first 2 weeks of the season play out. I think this week.
This would be a great week.
Be a great week to drop this
think so,
this
too.
interview with Chester Frazier, and it was a great one. I'm very excited for it, and got me really pumped for basketball season. It was a big weekend for basketball visitors. I don't know if anything came of it, but yeah, And I think the ACC women's basketball schedule came out last week, and I think the men's schedule might come out this week. So if you're looking for something else, you might have it in the form of basketball this week.
Yeah, and in terms, Chris brought it up, we're kind of getting in a groove here at Tech Sideline. So on the audio-video schedule, as usual over the last few weeks, we're going to have a Brent Pry press conference breakdown tomorrow. Might have an ODU beat writer interview on Wednesday. There's for sure going to be a preview podcast and buy or sell for the ODU matchup on Thursday for this podcast, as well as the Friday Q&A with Chris. So make sure to keep your notifications on and keep up what's all up to date with Tech Sideline. Well, thank you for watching episode 435 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the show if you haven't done so already. For Chris Coleman, David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, and Nick Brown behind the scenes, I'm Riley Klaus signing off.